What's up, everybody? Welcome to On the Record, a punk music podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Alex Newman, alongside Ben Brennan. What's going on, Ben?
Just existing.
That's nice. I like that. On the Record is a fan podcast where we discuss the Fat Records catalog, album by album, side by side, chronologically. We have no true music expertise. We're just some friends shooting the shit about albums we loved growing up. Today, we are discussing two EPs. This is our first time discussing EPs instead of just one LP. And we'll be talking about No Use for a Name's The Daily Grind and Rancid's Radio, Radio, Radio. But before that, Ben, can you tell our listeners why we've chosen the Fat Wreck catalog to talk about in detail?
Because when I got the music, I got a place to go. This is the music that I think when we were initially getting into music that we got into. So it's nice to come back and look at it again with different eyes or ears. I guess you don't really. Moving on.
Yeah. Fuck yeah, man. This episode's going to have just a slightly different structure because we're covering two releases, so we'll split it up in that way. There's a lot of EPs that Fat Wreck released. We don't want to skip over those, so this is just how we're going to do the EP episodes, and maybe we'll do episodes where we do 2, maybe 3. Admittedly, this No Use for a Name record, it's a little long. It's like on sort of on the cusp of being an LP because it's 8 songs. But we've got the Rancid EP sort of balances it out because it's so brief.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's get started. Ben, can you go through the liner notes for us?
Yeah. So for the first record that we're going to talk about today is No Use for a Name's The Daily Grind. It was released on May 31st, 1993. The band lineup at the time was Tony Sly on vocals and guitar, Robin Pfeffer on lead guitar, Steve, I forget what we agreed on this being already, Papautis?
Yeah, sounds good.
On bass.
Steve, we're sorry.
And then Rory Koff on drums. It recorded where I think pretty much everything we've talked about so far was recorded at the Music Annex, mixed at West Beach Recorders, produced by Don Cameron, Pat Coughlin, and Fat Mike. Got that one. Okay, let's start talking about this record.
That's the hardest name out of all of them. Yeah, it is interesting just to see this aspect of it, the like where a lot of these were recorded sort of at the same places. And I think this maybe is the first one that's recorded not at West Beach. This one was just mixed there. I think the other ones that we've talked about were recorded, or like everything was done at West Beach. But this is the first one that's not that Fat Mike isn't like sort of at the helm on. This is the first appearance of Don Cameron, but I think we're going to be seeing his name a lot going forward. But anyway, let's get started and let's talk about the Daily Grind. And I don't know about you, but this felt like a grind to me.
Yeah. There were bright spots in it. Definitely.
Yeah, agreed.
Bright spots. A lot of times for me, the bright spots were just the music itself.
Right.
I feel like Tony Sly's got a very distinct voice, and I feel like it just isn't working with the music throughout most of this record. Would probably be my biggest gripe throughout the whole thing, is that he just doesn't seem to be with it at times.
Yeah. I think I can agree with that. It does feel almost disconnected from the music in some ways. Because he's still pretty young here. Like these guys, they're all pretty young. It's in their early 20s, I think. And he's still sort of finding his way. Like just from like a vocalist perspective, and there's like it's such a change to listen to this record and then you go much further in and it's like a completely different voice almost. He's still learning how to be a vocalist here, I think. And I think that from what I read, that around this time was when they brought in like maybe not on this record, but shortly thereafter, they brought in another guitarist, and so that he could focus on singing. And he got much better at doing what he wanted to do. But there's still some good stuff here. We don't have to necessarily go track by track here. But I think for me, like when it comes to, I guess, the sound in general that they have, all their influences, they're very much wearing them all on their sleeve. Like there's so much Bad Religion here.
Oh god.
It's distracting because it pulls me out of it because I'm just like listening and I'm like, oh shit. I mean, there's so many instances where I'm just like, yep, it just sounds like they lifted from Bad Religion, which that's fine. Like it's not like they're I mean, I think it comes from a place of like of reverence, And Bad Religion was just so influential. I mean, it's unbelievable, really.
Yeah. I think like on a lot of these songs I have written down, definitely hear Bad Religion. Yeah.
It has traces of NoFX in spots, and I wonder, I always wonder about Fat Mike's influence here, because it's like in this case, it's really not so obvious, not as obvious as I guess maybe even Lagwagon and Propagandi's records definitely had Fat Mike's influence all over it, but here it's definitely got more of like a surprising amount of East Coast hardcore.
Yeah. Particularly Until It's Gone had a bit of that. I mean, I heard a lot of Bad Religion in that song, but like the intro to that was really fucking good. As was I felt like Feeding the Fire definitely had a bit of that vibe to it as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that was probably my favorite track on the EP. Feeding the Fire. The music's great. Tony Sly actually sounds good with the music on that song too. So I think that
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Until It's Gone, on the other hand, I didn't understand why it was almost 4 minutes long.
Oh my god. Okay, yeah, that's definitely a valid criticism here, is that for being only 8 songs, it just it feels longer than it is in some ways, and I don't know. I just felt like some of these songs just could have been cut down in terms of length and just in terms of the overall package. It's just some of these songs just don't do anything for me at all. It's I think just editing is such like I guess that's the thing that I'm noticing the most going through these records, is that when we were younger, we get these records, and at least I don't know about you, but I would look at the number of songs that would come on the record, and that almost like it's like, oh, it's value, right? Like I'm paying money and I got all these songs, but like these days I just don't feel that way.
Yeah, I forget when I discovered that, but there was a certain point where I was like, actually, more songs is almost never a good thing.
Yeah, because it just means that somebody did not edit.
Yeah. Like, or if the very least, if there's going to be more songs, put them at the end.
Right. It's B-sides, all that stuff. But I mean, even I think so many of these songs just kind of blend into each other.
Oh yeah.
And like technically the band is really solid.
Yeah.
But it somehow feels like I would describe this record as aggressively average. There's just nothing here that's really jumping out at me when I take it as a whole. And I do agree, Feeding the Fire is the best track on this record. But even that one has, it's just it does sort of pull me out of it a little bit when I hear that.
Yeah, that's a great song.
I Want to Conquer the World influence at the beginning of the song. It's kind of like, it's like, oh, okay, it's it's still very much like we're still in Bad Religion territory here. Which is, it's cool, but really the song, once it moves past that, it kind of does its own thing. and I really liked it. It's in contrast to a bunch of these songs, it doesn't wear out its welcome. I think it's sort of the perfect length. Um, and I think that this is definitely, I agree with you that this is Sly's best like vocal performance on the record for me because it matches the music more.
Um, you had mentioned Biomag having a particular like Bad Religion vibe to it, correct?
Yeah, I really felt that they really lifted from Automatic Man, from No Control.
Yeah, for sure. I also, I mean, I don't know the specific part at the moment, but I also wrote down. Also, sort of sounds like Lagwagon. I think in particular, the song kind of reminded me of Beer Goggles, at times. Uh,
Oh, okay. I hadn't really made that connection, but I could see that for sure. It's probably like more in like maybe even in just like the drums.
yeah, or the bouncingness, which is something
Right.
Automatic Man also kind of has, is that bouncy nature to it.
Yeah, definitely. Um, what did you think about this record from a lyrical perspective? Because I was so underwhelmed. There's just like
Yeah, I didn't
coming
think
off of Propagandhi, Propagandhi's lyrics were just like so remarkable and they're worthy of like really deep discussion. And this just to me ends up just it's the complete opposite. There's just I read the lyrics and there was almost nothing to really say about any of it. It's all kind of very very general.
Yeah, the ones that didn't seem the ones where I could actually tell what the song was supposed to be about did not seem particularly deep, and that would have been what old what's his name and Hazardous to Yourself. Um,
Yeah,
and then like
yeah.
all the other ones just seemed to kind of yeah, just the sea of lyrics.
He certainly wrote a lot. there's a there's a lot of words being said, almost surprisingly so. Like when I looked at the lyrics, I was like, "Is there really this many lyrics to the song?" And there are. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's the topics are just not that interesting. Until It's Gone is about the environment, pollution. It's about climate change without before climate change was really being talked about in that way. Um, and like and maybe maybe this is like I'm not like a super huge No Use for a Name fan. If you couldn't figure that out by now, it just I've never really been that gotten that into their records. But I'm just seeing like between this and then a much later record, what is it? Hard Rock Bottom. There seems to be Tony Sly seems to have this motif of homelessness. I don't understand why, because you've got Old What's His Name, which is about a man like falling on hard times and becoming homeless. And you just got a lot of like commentary about like homeless people, and maybe that's just like his life experience being around like living in cities where there's a lot of homeless people. But like Hard Rock Bottom has that cover art of a man who looks like he's homeless playing guitar for money. Um, but I just thought that was kind of a weird thing to notice. Um, but just other than that, you've got some of these songs. Yeah, there's almost nothing to really say about like Biomag. I have no idea what this song is about.
Yeah, I don't know. I did not really get as much lyrically out of the No Use for a Name
Right.
record as I did other stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's just like you just have to keep it in mind that like this is very much still a band at the very beginning of their career and still very much developing. And hell, he obviously gets much better at writing lyrics later on. Um, but yeah, this is just maybe a little bit too verbose, maybe because of the Bad Religion influence. Um, and so general and non-specific in so many ways. Uh, so like in particular, uh, Countdown. Uh, reading through the lyrics, it's social commentary about how, how the media portrays the world through a lens of negativity, but like it's just like a whole list of stuff. Like it's just not specific enough, and the reason that I even bring this up is because coming off of How to Clean Everything, where it's so specific and it's
Yeah.
so unique and well written, it's a stark contrast, to say the least.
All I really had to say about Countdown was this is a new fan song.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's what it was. Like, this is like what I would think of, like, in my mind, if I thought of a No Use for a Name song.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
wonder. I wonder if that one was on Fat Music, because that would probably also explain why that's like in my head.
No, you know what? I think Feeding the Fire is. I think
Okay.
that one,
That's the
which
hit.
makes sense because like that's the one where I'm just like, for some reason this sounds like, familiar to me, and I think it's because it was probably on there. And that makes sense because it's the best track. But something to I mean, and I could obviously be just like reading too far into things here, but listening to Countdown, there's some influences that I'm picking up on that, in one case, maybe I'm really, just kind of going down the rabbit hole a little bit too much. But, I'm listening to, the chorus, and he's singing Countdown, and it's reminding me so much of one of the first track from the Doughboys, Happy Accidents. And he's not singing it exactly the same way, but it's pretty similar. And then in listening to the vocalist from Doughboys, John Kastner, was in a hardcore band called Asexuals, and they have a song on one of their early records that has because Countdown has that like a really odd like beginning to it. Like it starts with this sort of like just sort of digital like effect that's kind of like ramps up, and it's just I have no idea why it's there. I don't understand why it's there. But there's a song on one of the Asexuals records that has a very similar beginning. And just like maybe the guys in No Use for a Name were really big, John Kastner fans, which I am too. So that's cool. But I'm just like I'm maybe pulling a little bit more out of this than maybe is warranted. But it just I found it a little odd.
Yeah.
Are there any other tracks here that you wanted to talk about? Because I guess if maybe one last thing we can talk about here is I think the title track, Daily Grind, it's sort of, to me, that one is signaling where No Use for a Name goes in the future. It feels like the most melodic one, and I think Tony Sly's doing mostly singing here, and it's not bad. It's a decent song, but it just doesn't stand up to Feeding the Fire, which is just it's a completely different vibe. But yeah, it works out all right. Any other thoughts on this one?
Well, not really. I mean, I guess it'll be interesting to see how I enjoy future No Use for a Name records going forward, because there will be plenty of those, I think, right?
Yeah, there's still quite a few to go.
Okay. Yeah. So, it was better than I anticipated it being, for myself also not being a huge No Use for a Name fan either.
Yeah. I would say it's sort of the audio equivalent of diner coffee. It's fine, but you can do much better.
Mm-hmm.
So favorite track, I think it's unanimous. Feeding the Fire. It's a good song. I like it. But I think that if you took off half of these songs, if you removed Old What's His Name, Permanent Rust, Countdown, and Hazardous to Yourself, I think it's just a better collection of songs, like overall.
maybe trim a minute off of until it's gone.
Yeah. Okay. Definitely agree there too. It's just too long.
I feel like no band on Fat Records should really have many songs over 2.5 minutes and any songs over 3 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, at least in the '90s, anyway. Like maybe some of the bands that come around later, it's okay. But yeah, I tend to agree.
All right, let's do some shout outs.
All right, sounds good. You want to do the first shout out here?
Yeah. So we're gonna shout out that bands are finally booking tours again.
Yes.
Seems to be the case that if you are looking to go to something right away, it's probably gonna suck. But if you're willing to wait until like September, October, November, some pretty good stuff is starting to get on the road. Where Alex and I are gonna go see Quicksand together in Los Angeles in October. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, can't wait. It's at the Troubadour, which is a great venue. It's actually the last time I saw Lagwagon, they played all of Haas, which is fucking awesome.
Oh god, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was great. But yeah, it's a really good venue. So I'm looking forward to seeing Quicksand there. I mean, you've never seen Quicksand, right?
No.
Holy shit, man. It's like it was maybe like the loudest band I've ever heard. I mean, holy fuck, dude. Like, it just about blew my ears off. It was crazy. But they sound like the one time I saw them, they were incredible. So definitely look forward to that. I want to give a shout out to YouTube once again, because, it's just like a lifesaver in terms of being able to find some of these really obscure releases. I think because there's no radio is not on any streaming services, and I don't have the record. So thank God it still exists on YouTube and we can listen to it. And speaking of, let's move on and talk about Rancid, which this is fantastic because this is, the only time we're going to be able to talk about a Rancid record on this podcast, like in detail. We can always bring up Rancid later on, in some of our other segments, and we probably will. But this is cool. So I'm going to go through the liner notes, and this is Rancid's Radio. It was released on August 26th, 1993. The band lineup was Tim Armstrong on vocals and guitar, Lars Fredriksson on guitar, Matt Freeman on bass, Brett Reed on drums. It was recorded at West Beach Recorders and produced by Don Cameron. So, where do you want to start here? I mean, we're going to talk about all four of these songs because they're all fucking awesome.
So, okay. The one thing that I thought of while going through the liner notes, we should probably make a note here that this was the first record to actually feature Lars. In Rancid. So,
right. So, up to this point, they were just a 3-piece, and they recorded their first record as a 3-piece. But fun fact that I really just did not know: Radio was written by Tim and Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day.
Oh, his brother.
Yeah, no relation. Which is it's funny. But because Billy Joe Armstrong was playing with Rancid before they added Lars, because I guess Rancid just realized that they wanted, I guess, a lead guitarist, and so he had been playing shows with them, and I would just like to stop for a moment and consider what the world would have been like had Billy Joe Armstrong not declined staying in Rancid, because they apparently had asked him like if he wanted to join the band, and he said no.
Would Dookie probably would have still come out, right?
Yeah,
that was February 1994. Does it blow up as big if he's juggling Green Day and Rancid, or does he probably just leave the second it blows up? It's probably
he probably leaves, right?
Yeah. Like the second Green Day blows up, he's out of there. So he may have been on When did Let's Go come out?
Let's Go was 94.
So yeah, he you may have seen him play on Let's Go then, but
Right.
would most likely have been gone after that, because there's no way that you
Yeah.
join Rancid and then you're
Right.
like, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like, do you feel the influence, like, do you of his songwriting on radio? Because I mean, I haven't honestly, like, maybe I should have before we started talking about this, but I didn't go back and listen to any Green Day to see if maybe I could pull any um anything that felt like you see the influence of his songwriting on radio, because it just feels like classic Rancid to me.
Kind of, but like it is, I want to say, like a bit catchier than Rancid songs were at that point in time.
Yeah.
Like the first record isn't crazy catchy. Let's Go has some catchy songs, Radio being the most catchy of those.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, maybe that is just his influence, is just the poppiness of it all.
Yeah, because I was gonna say actually that like to me, I like the version of Radio and Dope Sick Girl on this better than the ones on the LP, because I just think it sounds like a little bit more organic, less polished, which is something that
Yeah.
I like a lot with songs. So yeah, I think that in that sense, it would seem that it would go in the opposite direction of what you might associate with Green Day influence on Rancid, that it seems to be a little bit more raw of a record. And so yeah, I
Yeah.
thought,
I mean, you might consider the fact that they probably didn't have as much of a budget. It was probably more of like, I don't know. I couldn't really find a whole lot of information about the recording session for this record. But you'd imagine that they're probably, it is kind of like a, let's go to the studio and record some songs. We got these songs in our back pocket, and that's typically how, the singles and EPs happen. Is kind of like, oh, we've got these songs that we're really excited about, and we want to get them out there. So maybe it's just sort of like a, they're a rough draft that they end up sort of revising for the LP. But I mean, I think I agree. They're just they're a little bit better, I think, because you don't have a whole lot of time to sit there and refine and polish too much.
yeah. So yeah, I liked both of those on here a lot. I mean, they're both great songs on Let's Go. I went back and listened to these on Let's Go. I also what the fuck's the name of the song? The Sidekick. I forgot how much I fucking love that song off of Let's Go. Have you listened to that at all recently?
No, I was actually like really tempted to sit there and listen to Let's Go, but I just I just didn't have time.
Yeah, you should
But
definitely.
because I haven't gone back and listened to it in a very, very long. I honestly haven't listened to Rancid in years. Like, I might hear a song here and there, but like, I haven't sat down and really listened in quite a while. And that's what made this like even better, honestly. Because it's one of those things where the second I heard radio, I was like, oh yeah, that's why I fucking love this band. Um, it's just so much fun, you know.
So then the other two songs on this don't appear. Well, they don't appear on any of the Rancid records. So Just a Feeling. I thought it reminded me a lot of the way Rancid sounds on Rancid 2000. Right, like it's much more aggressive than I think Rancid got before that
Yeah.
record, at least. And then I just wrote this song fucking rocks, and then I remembered, oh yeah, this was on Fat Music for Fat People.
Right.
I was like, why is this not? Why is this song familiar to me, but why is it not on any of the records? Oh,
That's
right, it's on
exactly the
Comp.
thought that I had. Yeah. Because I went looking and I was like, oh, or these three songs, Radio, Dope Sick Girl, and Just a Feeling, these are all on Let's Go, right? They have to be. And they're and this one was missing, and I was like, what the fuck? And yeah, so I found that and I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense why I know this song so well. Despite it not having been on the LP. But man, that that bass lead in at the beginning, like it's just iconic Rancid. It's so fucking great. It hooks you immediately. It just pulls you in. It's so good.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really, really fun Rancid song. So this was fun to listen to. I hope, hopefully at some point, because this was apparently reissued in 2009. I'm looking at right now. That at some point these versions of the songs end up on Spotify or something, or maybe we should just buy the record. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I would imagine. I know that Rancid does have a B-sides record where this stuff's probably all on there.
Couldn't find the Blitz cover or Just a Feeling. I don't think. I looked. I didn't think I could find either.
Man, that's weird. Yeah, it just feels like it should have been on an LP, and I just don't understand why it wouldn't be elsewhere other than this one little EP.
I mean, to some degree, it, like I said, it doesn't fit as much as like their sound was definitely moving on a trajectory that was more like ska and reggae influenced. It seemed until a left turn that we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, for
happens.
sure.
And so it kind of makes sense that wouldn't make it on the Let's Go, just because it's a little bit more like frenetic, fast paced, and again, like a lot of the stuff they're going for is like a slower, kind of more chill vibe almost.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel, which manifests with "Life Won't Wait," which is very, 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 very reggae.
Yeah. To my dismay, it's not. It's just like it's not for me.
I don't like it.
I haven't listened to it in so long that I know there are definitely songs on there that are great, that I remember like loving, but I think largely that one is a miss for me, just because I'm not into that whole vibe. What did you think about, I guess, about the lyrics to these songs? Because I ended up like sort of comparing because the lyrical stylings of Tim Armstrong versus Tony Sly, very different, like shockingly so, because it's just Rancid is so much more like poetic, which is kind of funny to say considering how like aggressive and
it's got like kind of like a hobo poetry to it.
Yeah, sure.
Well, like a kind of a not exactly the same, but like a Kerouac style of like rough around the edges poet sort of thing.
Yeah, Bukowski, right?
Yeah. So I definitely that is definitely something that I think Rancid has excelled at, is at least having very interesting lyrics that tell stories, because that's pretty much what a lot of these songs do, is just telling a story.
Although, do you have an idea of what Just a Feeling is about? Because I read the lyrics and I was like, I have no idea what the song's about.
It's probably just about a feeling. Like literally.
That's why it's called that.
That's what I've always assumed, at least.
Right. It's like that's the whole point of the song, is that it's like it's not about anything. It's just about how I feel. Which, that's valid. That's cool. But radio, like radio has one of I just love this line. When the music hits me, I feel no pain at all. Like, it's so simple, but it's it's so relatable, especially to people that are just so into music.
Oh, I was totally wrong. I'm looking at the lyrics to Just a Feeling now. I mean, I think it's probably about. My best guess is mental illness. Like the chorus, just a feeling it don't seem right. Just a feeling it don't seem right.
I don't know. He mentioned something about like pornography in Los Angeles, and
can't tell mom homicidal.
Okay. Yeah.
That would be my best guess from looking at this, but I have
no
idea.
Maybe. I could kind of understand that.
All right. So then the last song to talk about is they've got this Blitz cover on there. I'd not heard it till I listened to this record. I love the original song by Blitz.
Yeah.
I thought this was really fucking fun because it's exactly what you would picture Rancid covering Blitz sounding like. Like it sounds like the original song, just with like fucking crazy bass lines and wild ass Rancid shit thrown throughout the entire song.
It's definitely sped up, that's for sure.
Like just filtered through the Rancid lens.
I know, and like that's what, you know, the way bands cover other bands, like it really tells you something about like just like I guess the overall skill, like because this just feels like a Rancid song when you listen to it. Like there's when I listened to it originally, I mean, you could have told me it's just a Rancid song and I'd believe you. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
there's just nothing here that makes me think, oh, this is something else. And that's awesome because I think when a band puts their own spin on something, it's that much better. You know, it's like maybe you don't like the cover compared to the original, but like you can't deny that they did their own thing here, but they remain true to the actual song, and it's fucking awesome. Like I like both versions a lot. I probably prefer the Rancid version just because I like how fast it is. But the original is great too. But yeah, I mean, we said a lot about this very very short little record, and it's only about 8 minutes long. But goddamn, it is certainly a quality record. It's so good.
Yeah. Much less songs. All the songs are great.
Yeah,
Very
it's just
good
like
EP.
it just feels like it's bursting with energy and life compared to, unfortunately, compared to you know, the daily grind. Just man, yeah, it's just I actually just can't get over how like apt that title is for that record.
I mean, the other thing we should note here is that I think at this time there was lots of in the early 90s there were lots of changes to No Use for a Name's lineup, as best I understand.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
There's like the record before this one was just a 3-piece. And as you were saying, they were transitioning into a 5-piece at one point as well. And then with Rancid, on the other hand, these are 4 fucking pros, right? Like at the they're not
True.
they've not reached the heights that they're going to reach, but like
They're on the verge of it, right?
These
Like
guys had been in big bands already, and were on the verge of breaking out huge. So like,
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
you're looking at bands in different stages of careers, or musicians at different stages of careers. I think
1000% completely valid point. It's just I can't help but compare the two. It's an interesting contrast. Like you seeing a band that's just starting to gel, and sort of figured themselves out. Because Daily Grind definitely feels like a band it feels like an in-between record, right? Like it's the old meets the new, and it's just that bridge record between where they were and where they're going. Because I think the next LP from No Use for a Name is where the band really takes off. But any final thoughts on Rancid here?
I think it's great. I'm excited to keep talking about them a little bit as we go into the next segment.
Oh yeah, we're definitely going to keep talking about Rancid here, but yeah, it's just a lot of fun. I mean, like every one of these songs is just a great like track it makes you want to sing along to it and stuff. It's great. All right, Ben, you want to talk about our new little segment here?
Yeah. So, since we're covering multiple records on these EP episodes, and the format's changing a bit, I feel like instead of just going into rival records, I've come up with the idea that we're going to do a segment that I've named with zero foresight, Back to the Future. So basically here, we plan to invert the concept for rival records. So instead of looking at things that came out around the same time, we're looking at records that came out in the past relative to these records, or in the future relative to these records. So past records, I wanted to mention Cocksparrer's Shock Troops.
Hell yes.
I thought that this was a good old record that I think, somebody that's a fan of the Rancid EP, if you haven't heard yet, you should definitely check out. Great, really poppy, catchy, oi street punk music from 1982. They were, the Shock Troops came out the same year that Voice of a Generation came out. So another good connection to the Rancid LP as well. What'd you think about this record when you heard it?
I can't believe that I have never listened to this record, because the second I put it on, I was like, "Oh my god, this is fucking awesome." Um, and it's so interesting that it felt so familiar so quickly, for a variety of reasons. Part of it is just listening to bands that have taken clear influence, but also like I've heard bands cover these songs, and I just never really like thought about it. I never thought to myself, "Oh, I should go back and listen to the original." Um, but in the case of like, really, it just makes me like realize that One Man Army completely lifted the sound. Um, and that's totally cool, because hey, I'm still a big fan of One Man Army. Great band. Um, but the other thing I noticed about this record is it's, at least, I don't know, maybe you'll agree, maybe not. I feel like it seems to be taking a lot of influence from early Undertones.
Yeah, I could definitely hear Undertone's influence. Um, for certain, like that kind of late 70s power pop seems to shine through a bit on it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Um,
love that, because I love early Undertones stuff.
Same here. Yeah. So yeah, I thought that this would be a great record to listen to, just in terms of, if you're really digging that Rancid record, if you're really digging the Blitz cover and the original, you should look into Cocksparer's Shock Troops. Which past record did you choose?
So I'm bringing Doughboys, Whatever. It's from '87, and this was their first record. I'd earlier, when I was talking about No Use for a Name, I mentioned Doughboys and Asexuals, which were both John Kastner bands. Um, but like, eh, Doughboys, I mean, I just can't believe that this record is as obscure as it is. It feels like a crime. Um, it feels this is another one of those records that feels like it's ahead of its time. It definitely it does more than just add melody to what he was doing with Asexuals. It definitely is like a blending of a lot of different stuff. But like, you do have the, like, it's got the speed of the punk stuff, but then there's just like so much more melody and harmonizing in the vocals, which is just, it's so excellent. um and if you listen to it and you've never heard it before, you might be a little surprised at like how similar it sounds, like the way that he's singing. It definitely recalls. It's almost like a precursor to Screeching Weasel. The Doughboys are definitely an influence on like where pop punk was headed at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. The when I listened to this record, I just heard, like, I can definitely hear similarities in the vocal patterns with Tony Sly as well, but I heard a
Yeah,
lot of where Ben Weasel was, I don't know, coming from, or maybe it was just in the ether or something like that. Because this record
yeah,
came out, a was Screeching Weasel formed at because this is 87, right? The Doughboys record?
yeah. So Screeching Weasel came around in '86, but they hadn't. I don't think they released anything until '87, or maybe '88. But yeah. So I mean, maybe he was listening to it. I mean, I would imagine that he probably at least heard it at some point, but I don't know that how much of an influence that must have had on him.
Mhm.
Um, but man, it's really hard to ignore if you like remember like old Screeching Weasel. Um, but there's more than that here too. Like, you just, I hear it like so many different like bands. You can even hear uh some Rancid. Like, there's one song, it's called "You're Related," that reminds me, like the vocals kind of remind me of like what Matt Freeman does when he takes the lead on some Rancid songs. Um, there's songs that remind me of Sugar, because someone's channeling some Bob Mould here.
Yeah.
Um, the song "No Holiday from Living" is definitely a good example of that. And then I was really like struck by how similar he sounds to Ari from Lifetime in the last track on the record. I don't want to know.
Well, we'll have an interesting insight about
Right?
that in a
It's
moment.
right. Like it's so interesting how like all of these things that we're talking about without even trying all sort of connect in their own way.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. But yeah, it's just this record just it feels really underrated. Just because I don't feel like anybody ever talks about Doughboys. Even though at the time I think that they were a big deal, and they actually did eventually reach like the major label and had like a top 40 hit and stuff. But they feel largely forgotten, and it's a bummer because really from the beginning they're a great band. And this is a great record, so I definitely recommend it. It is fantastic from front to back, and my personal favorite from this one is the song "I Remember." It's just
Um,
excellent.
so the other thing that the Doughboys record kind of reminded me of is early Lemonheads. Not
Hmm.
necessarily like in the vocals, but just like in like the way the music kind of sounds and feels is very much a kind of like that early Lemonheads. Like it's pretty punk, but it's almost kind of like indie rock, almost in that kind of like nexus between the two.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. This is definitely like one of those records that's sort of taking a whole bunch of sort of influences and bringing it together in a new package that maybe at the time there's probably wasn't a whole lot of this out there. I mean, I haven't really encountered too much stuff that sounds just like this one.
all right, now we're going back to the future.
All right.
So the future record I picked was while I was listening to No Use for a Name. I just had this feeling that it really reminded me, or a record that reminded me a lot of what they were going for on that No Use for a record, um, is Gray Area's Fanbelt Algebra. And so listening to it again, this was I at one point thought that there were Tim Armstrong guest vocals, but it turned out to be Ari from Lifetime, which factors in even more there. So it's a great fucking record. It is just really fast, melodic, punk, hardcore type stuff. Super fucking catchy. Ernie has a great fucking voice.
Yeah.
So I think like in terms of like a really, really strong singer, which Tony Sly is, maybe not there yet in daily grind, but he's got a very strong voice.
Yeah.
Ernie also has a very strong voice as well. And so I thought that this fit very well. The other interesting connection between all these records too is that Fanbelt Algebra and the one that you picked that we'll talk about in a second both came out in the year 2000.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So it's a great record. Gray Area is awesome. I feel like they've been a little forgotten.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's just again, that's a shame. And man, like re-listening to this one after a long time not having not listened to it, I was really struck by the last track, Cannonball, because Ernie does that intro
Oh
where
yeah,
he like thanks the listener and says that he hopes that the story will be continued, and that's a bummer because this was their last record. Um, and I wish that there had been more.
yeah.
But yeah,
Gray Area rules.
there's a
Very-
real strong Lifetime influence here, I think,
Mm.
on the record overall. So if you're a fan of Lifetime and you've never heard this, definitely check it out. If
I've got a spicy take about Gray Area. I think that the Gray Area records have held up better for me than the Kid Dynamite records did.
oh, okay.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I just listen to this. I'm like, there's nothing on this that I ever want to skip. Like this record is
yeah,
great from front to back.
it really is. It's fantastic. Like so many of these songs are so memorable. Because I found myself like, yeah, it's been a long time since I've listened to this one too. But coming back to it, I was like, oh, I remember all these songs. Like, just there's every single one of these songs has like at least one really memorable moment that I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, definitely remember this one.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but it's to the point where I can't even pick a favorite really. I mean, I think the first track is really really awesome. And
Yeah.
then the song where Ari does guest vocals, "Hold On Tight,"
Hold On
is
Tight's a great one.
really great. I love the chorus on "Gotta Get Away." It's really fun.
Sour Grapes has always been one of my favorites too.
Yeah, that's really good too. Yeah, it's tough to pick because like really like there's no bad songs here.
Yeah. All right, what's the last record we're going to talk about today?
All right, the last one, my future pick relating to Rancid is the Distillers self-titled, and maybe that's a bit obvious, but I think this record, it surprised me how much I kind of wrote it off back when I first heard it because I so much preferred Sing Sing Death House, which I still think is the better record, but this is so much better than I remembered it being.
Oh yeah, I was blown away. I remember always preferring Sing Sing Death House too. I've got to go back and listen to that at some point. But like I was like, shit, I might like this more than any Rancid record was kind of my initial response to it. Like,
Oh wow, okay, yeah, I wouldn't go that far. I don't think it quite gets there. But it's really great. I think the Rancid influence is undeniable. I mean, for so many reasons. Brody, uh, first of all, did not know she was Australian. And we saw. I mean, that was like the first. That was
it was
honestly
one
that
of the
was
first punk shows we went to. Was
that
the
was
Distillers. It was fucking awesome. It was
it
great.
was for me. It was the first like really like small, most like punk show I'd ever been to. Like, I mean, that was the one. That was the first one. And I remember it very distinctly. I remember everything about that night, but I do not remember her having an accent of any kind. So when I saw that she was Australian, I was just like, how could I have not ever remembered that? Um, but she came over from Australia when she was 18 to Los Angeles, and she started the Distillers. Um, and she was coming over to be with Tim. And so you can see how just like that influence was definitely like going to be there. There's no way it wasn't going to be. But notably, he did not have anything to do with this record. And when I looked at the credits, so he wasn't, he didn't produce it or anything. But his influence is definitely felt. Just there's a lot of times like even in her vocal delivery where you feel like she's really just she's channeling Tim.
Oh, absolutely. So I mean, I really think though that there's influence that's going both directions here. Because if you think about, the fucking Rancid album that came out the same year, it sounds way more like this and not nearly much like the previous Rancid album, Life Won't Wait, right?
Yeah.
They're going fucking reggae on Life Won't Wait, and now they're playing like basically like a fucking 80s hardcore punk record. So something something happened there, and the timing here.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I always thought Rancid 2000 was like it was like the band was sort of like, all right, let's just I don't want to do this anymore. Let's just go back to what we did originally. And it's sort of like you'd be forgiven if you thought that this was one of the first Rancid records. Like when you look at their self-titled from 2000, it's almost like a reset, It's like 'cause they didn't title the record, so it's like the second self-titled. It's sort of like they just sort of like, okay, let's just kind of hit the reset button and try this again to great effect. And I really do tend to agree. Like probably was because at least in part, um, the Distillers and Brody. Uh, so we have her to thank for a really great Rancid record.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking. Another interesting connection to all of this is, do you want to know what studio the Distillers album was recorded at?
West Beach.
West Beach Recorders. So even more connections. There's a conspiracy going on here.
Yeah, I mean, like these yeah, they're all using the same people. It makes sense. I wasn't surprised, honestly. Like even this far out, from the early '90s all the way up to 2000, I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot of West Beach. And then I think a lot of these bands just kept going back to the same guys, which was that's cool. They still evolved, they still changed. It was great. I think the worst thing I can say about the self-titled Distillers record is that it's maybe a little long. I think some of the songs are maybe a little too long. I think that was one of the improvements on Sing Sing Death House was the songs felt a little bit more, I guess, economical.
Also 14 songs long, I think, which is
it's 14 songs and 40 minutes, and it's there's a lot of it's a lot of woes and yeahs that maybe could have cut down on.
There's another connection between the Distillers album and the Gray Area album. Both of them have a song titled Colossus on them.
I know. I noticed that too. It's so weird.
It's fucking signs, man.
Yeah, it's very strange. None of this was planned. We did not talk about any of this. So yeah, I highly recommend checking out the original, the first Distillers record. If you enjoyed Rancid and you somehow missed the Distillers, I think it would have been kind of easy to miss the first one, because Sing Sing Death House really blew up. I mean, that's what it got him a major label record deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, really, really solid record. A lot of fun.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode. If you have any questions or comments or corrections on anything we got wrong, please email us at ontherecord@gmail.com so we can set the record straight in a future episode. Next, we'll be back in a couple of weeks to talk about Lagwagon's Trashed. That's that time again. We're already back to Lagwagon. But until then, thanks for listening.